This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Snarky Faith. Snarky Faith is a place where we dive headfirst in the tumultuous crossroad of life, culture, and politics in Christendom today. Fed up with the insanity in Christianity? Well, you'll feel right at home here. I'm Stuart Deloney, and Snarky Faith is more than just a critique. Join me as we wrestle, question, and explore the dialogue that shapes our faith in the world today. So look for Snarky Faith wherever you listen to podcasts.
Lord have mercy. The Lord is my shepherd. He know what I want.
Well, hello and welcome to I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist. I tell you, this is such an interesting episode. I don't even want to banter. I mean, we're going to have to, right? Because that's what we do. Hi, Bart. Hi, Megan. How's the weather? All that kind of stuff. But I mean, you can hear it now. I'm dialed. I'm wired. This is one of the biggest episodes we've done in forever.
In history. And I think people are going to enjoy it, I hope, because we enjoyed it. And what we did enjoy was going to church. And this morning we went to church. We went back to Great Big AOG. For me, first time I'd graced those doors in 27 years. How long for you, Troy?
I reckon it's about 28 because I've got a feeling I went back in 96. I could be wrong. It might have been 95. So, yeah, it could be 29, 30. Whatever it is, it's more than you.
Yeah, so it means that my freshness in the Lord is fresher than yours. Pretty much is what I'm saying.
Did you ever in the Lord have those not so fresh feeling?
I did have some not so fresh feeling, and I can't wait.
You know, on the heavy days.
Yeah. But I later in the episode, as we reflect, because what we're going to try and do is go chronologically through pre-episode right through to the end of the episode, and there was a word that was brought by the pastor
there was
about
more
freshness.
Than a word. There was a few words.
No. But this one word was about freshness, particularly about minty, fresh breath freshness. So,
that's right. There was too, wasn't there?
Oh,
yes.
there was.
There was some brand new imagery that we didn't have in our time in church. But hey, let's get to it. But Brian, before we do, we have a special guest, and this special guest is more special to you than she is to me. But you're still special. But
she's special in a good way, in that she is my one flesh. She is the other part of my one flesh, and we are one flesh in Jesus. We are the three-stranded cord with Jesus, except we don't have Jesus. So, besides
and you're not actually married.
Yeah, but de facto.
No. Fundamentalism. Sorry, no, you are not. You are unequally yoked. Bad.
Yeah, well, pretty soon, if that law does change in Indonesia, we can't go to Bali anymore because you got to be married to go there. There's a law coming. But without further ado, I would like to welcome my lovely life partner and betrothed, because we are betrothed, and we will be married one day. But welcome to I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist, Michelle.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Yes, you are a long-time listener. You haven't listened to every episode, so let's call bullshit on that.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Well, no, she is a long-time listener. She just hasn't listened to anything. But hey, really quickly, because I don't know that we remember to say this. Michelle, were you a teenage fundamentalist?
I wasn't. No.
Okay.
I was not.
All right. Should we still have her on, Troy?
Well, she brings perspective, yada, yada. We could treat her like a contractor.
Okay, that's fine. And we'll sack her at the end. But what I
at the end of the contract, at the end of the project. Yeah.
Yeah, after this is aired, not before then, because then she might go all funny on us. But the reason that she is with us today is that she came along to Great Big AOG with us, and we wanted to bring her along so she could offer her reflections and special commentary. And I did say this before we started recording. It's a little bit like commentating football, where you have your boundary commentators who are down there in the weeds with the game, giving their special comments. And Michelle will be doing that today.
Yeah, and the fact that you were never in it is actually unique to this pod. So it's brilliant that you're here. All jokes aside, absolutely brilliant that you're here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
But just to contextualize Michelle's experience of today, Michelle, you tell us a little about the family you grew up in, your experience, and whether you had had exposure to Christianity or church prior to today.
Yeah, so I did. I have had a little bit of exposure, I guess. I grew up in an atheist family. So both my parents are non-believers, and my dad's mum, staunch Christian. And when I'd visit my gran, she would sometimes take me to church. She used to play the organ, and she would take me along with her, and sometimes I'd sit underneath the organ while she was playing in the service. So had a little bit of exposure from a young age. Then, when we moved to England, when I was at the start of high school, I went to a Christian school in England, and through that experience, did attend church quite regularly with some friends. Um, but the experience from then was very different to today, what I experienced today.
Yeah, and the fact that grandma was playing the organ means that they may not have been saved. Like they actually might have been in a dry, dead church.
Comparative to today, but it is good that we've kept the family tradition going because Michelle and I like to play the organ together as well. So
Is
that's
that
that's
still a
great.
thing? Is the organ still? There was no organ today that I could see.
Well, that's between Brian and his little blue pills, if the organ's still a thing. I think you missed the euphemism there, Michelle.
She did,
I
which is
did.
unusual.
Yes.
It's
No.
she was still stuck in the world of today. Which no, there
In the
was no
real
organ.
organ. Mm.
There was a band. It was very Hillsongish, very Hillsongish. But we are going to go back a bit further to that, and that is around the preparation for today, Troy. We have spoken about this on the pod probably over a couple of years ago, and we're going to go back. We're going to go back, and we're going to go to a service, and we haven't done it for a variety of reasons. But today we did it. When you woke up this morning, how were you feeling knowing today was the day you were going to grace the steps of Great Big AOG?
Believe it or not, I was 100% fine. Was barely thinking about it, folding washing and doing other things that you do on a Sunday morning, and not really thinking about it until I looked at my watch and went, "Oh, Uncle Brian's going to be here soon to pick me up." And that's when I felt I don't want to call it anxiety, but it probably was a little bit, but there was definitely a mix of excitement as well. I started to feel a little bit elevated in my heart rate and mood, but I wouldn't call it negative. I was, yeah.
Look, I was feeling okay as well this morning, and I was thinking, yeah, okay, we're going to go. It was a bit of the unknown that I was going, oh, what's it going to be? Am I going to see anyone I know? And then I thought, I actually look quite different to what I did 27 years ago, and I'm not sure that I would have noticed anyone because we know how transient these places are. People come in, they generally don't stay a lifetime. You do have a few of your life members, and we did see at least one of them there today that was around when we were there and has been around since they were a child. But besides that, you don't see too many people like that in that scene, do you?
No, that's true. There's certainly not a whole lot of lifers. I think there's sort of core families that are probably still there. As a matter of fact, I know that to be the case, but we didn't really see them. But you know where I did start to feel my anxiety rising was when I got in the car with you both, because you both came and picked us up, and it was. I mean, I don't know if you can remember, Michelle, but we were talking, and I was sort of losing my train of thought, and because it was just
Yep.
yeah, I started to, I don't know, dissociate's not the word, but I certainly wasn't in the moment. Yeah, it started to build, I think, once we started to drive closer.
You could definitely feel, Troy, your nervous energy. I think that ability to concentrate on the conversations we were having, you were distracted. And that was building, I think, more and more the closer we got. Whereas I think Brian, there's a little bit of nervous energy there, a few sort of nervous laughs, but I think you were probably a bit more quiet than you normally were. So probably internalizing some of that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I also am still a Christian and still saved. So I wasn't as nervous as you guys going in there because I knew that I would receive favor from the Lord, and you two were going in there with dark souls.
Well, that was obviously the case because you sat there taking notes and raised your hands and the whole bit. But I get ahead of myself. I get ahead of myself. Where I did start to really feel it though, and I realized that I was pinging off the walls, like literally, no, sorry, I sound like a 17-year-old, literally, figuratively, was I was just on the move as soon as we got in that building. From room to room, a hallway, bookshop, bang, 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 like a pinball, because by that stage I was anxious for sure.
I was going to give you a complimentary prostate check at the end because you went for 3 wees from the time we got there until we left, and I know
I think it was 4, wasn't it 4 altogether?
4. So okay, you averaged one about every 34 minutes. Then we were there
Yeah,
two.
but I drank 1.25 liters of Coke Zero before I got in the car. So fairness to me, there's a lot of liquid to be expelled.
And you did have the holy water, the gifted holy water while we were there too, Troy.
Yes, the welcome pack water. Yes, I did.
And I do. We are going to come back to the fact that we did get a car park through prayer right out the front of the church.
We did. We did. We were thanking Jesus, and we got a park, an all-day park too. Funny enough, not just the 2-hour. Yeah, bless.
It was crazy shit, but
it was rockstar parking. Actually, it was very front.
Yeah, I
center.
know, as if we were the special guests. This is how Satan treats his useful vessels. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. But we did actually. Troy stole a welcome pack because we went in there, but the person who was on
hold on, I did not steal a welcome pack. They was sitting on the table, and there was nobody there, and I welcomed myself. That's not theft.
Usually, when you get a gift, especially a welcome gift, someone would hand it over to you and go, welcome. It's not going there and taking it yourself. That is theft.
Oh, come on. No, I was there. I was a visitor. Jesus, no.
He was perplexed. The man was perplexed when he came back to his desk and there were only 2 welcome packs left because he knew there were 3 before he got up.
Did you see his face?
I did see his face.
Yeah, well, he knew me, and that's who I wasn't going to go anywhere near. That was the guy who had been there his whole life. Yeah.
Yes, and he definitely knew you because he has given warning to somebody in our group about you and declared that you are a heathen. So he definitely would have known you. There's possibly a wanted poster there somewhere hidden today. But the welcome pack was shit, I've got to say. I remember the welcome packs. It was so fucked. Like, as Michelle said, there wasn't even a chocolate-shaped Jesus or anything in it. There was a fucking shit bottle of water. I think it was like a 150 ml.
It was tiny. Oh, my God, yes.
But it was holy water.
It could have, yeah, that's right. It could have been for the vampires. It could have been for the vampires because it was just small. That'd do damage to a vampire. That'd leave a nasty mark.
It would. And later, again, we're going to get to this. There was some of that holy water thrown on people at the front of the church today. So water was a bit of a theme, and the sermon was about a river as well, the impenetrable river. So it was so much penetration talk too. There was a lot of
penetration talk and a lot of coming. It was a lot. Do you know what we should have done? I think about this now. I wish I'd done it at the time when he was throwing, because I didn't see that he was throwing the water. When he was throwing the water, I should have really loud and gone when it was hitting people. But well, opportunity missed.
Yeah, it was an opportunity missed. But next time when we go back in another 27 or 30 years, we'll try it then. But we did, on the way, we had a bit of banter, we had a bit of chat, there was nervousness, but we did roll up. And the first thing, Michelle, credit to you, you said there's a car park and it's an all-day one. right out the front. Like it was right out of the front of the area that in Great Big AOG, you walk in, it's the corporate area, which is the offices, and it was right out the front of the offices. It was like the days of old where I pulled up to go in there to offer my service to the pastors.
Yeah, it was. It was holy. And those stairs were still there. We should have gone up and had a look. I don't think you did either. It would have been interesting to go up to that corporate area. Maybe it's not a corporate area anymore. They've probably got offices in Toorak now.
Yeah, who knows? But there was a fair bit of change. I think when we walked in, you could see that they had. It was certainly less imposing, and it was a bit trying to make it a bit more welcome. But walking into it was, I don't know, it was sort of like walking into a conference, wasn't it?
I I felt it was really when walking in, I think it just hits you in the face that this is a big business. Everywhere you look, it's just a business that is really drawing people in and preying on people's vulnerabilities. And to me, that was the first thing as soon as we walked in that it just looked like. And even to the point where there's a little cafe set up, there's a gift shop, there was spaces you could sit and meet and talk. There was this kids club. It was just a massive business, and that's all I could see as soon as we walked in. It was really interesting.
All right, Sinner. All right, you and your judgments. Just hold off, sister. No, you're right. We got in there, and I actually said that it felt like a corporate office, didn't it? Because you're walking in, and there's just all the branded merchandise, and there was actually a space called Revival Merchandise. They didn't even call it something else. It was like, no, this is for sale, and there were $60 and $70 hoodies. I mean, that was just insane. What is this goddamn H&M? I think H&M hoodies are cheaper.
Oh, the prices were astronomical. There was a tiny little candle for $30 that had joy written on it, and I just couldn't believe the prices.
Michelle, you can't put a price on joy.
Yeah, you can't put a
Well,
price on joy.
they put $30, and I wasn't prepared to pay it.
And it did match the little water bottle as well in size. Maybe it's a thing.
Yes, honey, I shrunk the trinkets. It's this thing too with the t-shirts. Just had the shirts had just joy on them, and what was it, a little revivalist or something like that?
Born revivalist.
Revivalist, sorry, but they had kids jumpsuits and stuff like that there too. That was born revivalist. They had t-shirts. They had revivalist beanies, but it was RVLST, so it's like
Oh,
trying to
very
be
hip.
really trendy. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
very hip.
very very
Yeah,
hip.
hashtag hip. Yeah.
Little coffee shop in the corner as well. So we didn't get a coffee because we caffeinated on the way, but we were there about 20 minutes early. So we were able to sit in the foyer and just observe people. But interestingly, and this was something I was most nervous about before leaving this morning, was that we are going to get pounced on by people going, "Hey, who are you? Let me introduce you to my friend, Jesus." But we didn't. We didn't get anyone who hassled us really in the foyer, did we?
Yeah, that was really disappointing. I think that nobody, apart from the welcome desk um, guy that had the packs that Troy stole, there wasn't anybody there. We mustn't have looked new or fresh enough. Um, but just going back to that, the cafe too, Brian, I just wanted to point out that there's some missed business opportunities in that cafe, and I think really I might write them a bit of a letter post my experience today because not a muffin in sight, and that time of the morning I was really after something to eat, nothing. So there's some opportunities that they can tap into, I think.
Which is a long way from our church days because they didn't sell food at all. Besides a little bit of wine and cracker, there wasn't really much going on at all. So, you know, half full glass, I guess.
However, I do think that they had the marketing down pat because the service, they had one service at 9 a.m., then the next one at 11:30. You weren't getting us up for 9 o'clock. So we went to the 11:30. And when we left, it was quarter to quarter to two, something like that. Yeah, it was 2.25 hours we were there. And mind you, it still hadn't finished. But on the way out, they get you with signs going, "Hey, do you want to buy a sausage and bread? Do you want to buy a drink?" And they've got a sausage sizzle out the front. They've got a little bar with drinks, and you buy stuff for their missions trip. So they do feed you afterwards for a price, of course, for a price. But there was nothing at the cafe. You're right. So missed opportunity. And I do think, I know Michelle does love to write a sternly worded letter to different organizations that don't necessarily meet her very high standards. And it's evident she has high standards. She's with me. So I think that you should write to them and point that out and say at the end of it, just say, I'm praying for you.
I think I will do that, and I might give them a little tip too that at the end with their sausage sizzle, the onion was on top, and I thought, look, that's controversial. If you're putting it on top, you know, obviously it needs to
It
be
tends to
underneath.
fall off, doesn't
Well,
it?
that's right. That's the whole Bunnings movement of why the onion is now on the underneath the sausage. So yeah, look, there's probably a couple of things I'm going to put into that letter, Brian. I'll let you have a look at it before I send it.
No need. I'm not the head of the household. Let's step out of the patriarchy. We did step into it for a couple of hours today, but no need to ask permission now we're out. I completely agree though. Onion on top, falls, slip hazard, OH&S, and Jesus is going to get sued.
Well, people get to meet him quicker. Maybe that's what it is. So, hey, we went inside. The whole place, not the people who have never been will care, but the whole place has been renovated. It's very much sort of theatre-esque or amphitheatre-esque. It used to be one level. Now they've got sort of 2, even 3 levels with sort of, sloping seats. It's very Hillsong, but, on a much smaller scale, of course. And it was interesting that we got in there and thought, not a lot of people, not a lot of people at all. And they've had a sexual scandal. Their pastor was fucking the music pastor, I think was the story. But hey, maybe not. I'm not saying that's what happened. And so I thought maybe a lot of people had dropped off. But as the service went on, and maybe because they knew there was going to be an hour and a quarter of worship, maybe because people knew that, there's no hurry to get there right on time. But as I said to you at the time, obviously punctuality no longer a gift of the spirit, because we used to be there right on time, even a little bit early. Most people were there. Kingsley would come out and start the fast songs, and the place would just go wild. Whereas this was, we eased into it, but there was no fast songs.
Which I found really disconcerting, because what happens to those that aren't ready for the slow songs? Because as we know, it was a bit an apprenticeship approach where if you weren't quite there and ready to take people into the spirit, into a worship space, you would be apprenticed through the fast songs, and then you would move into the slow songs, because that's where your gift really had to be tested. Slow songs from the start. But when we walked in, I think it was 11:25 we walked in for an 11:30 start, and it was like it was the preparatory stuff with a prayer meeting, because there was a lady up there whose job it was to basically bind the fuck out of everything. So she was binding the spirit
Yes,
of
she
distraction.
was. Yeah.
She was speaking peace over everyone, and she was speaking about those very things that may want to set the scene. So I'm not quite sure if we were meant to quite be in there, but there wasn't ushers or anything like that. In our day, there was
Oh, they
people
were.
that
You were missing them. No, they had lanyards on, and they were standing at the door, and they'd say hi to you when you walked in. They were definitely there. I saw them.
oh, I didn't feel very ushered, because their job back in the day was to hand out a paper service or order of service or whatever, and you
Yeah,
would read it. So
and
maybe
later the
that's
welcome packs too.
yeah. Well, the welcome packs, they did definitely have some people strategically placed around the auditorium to be able to stand up at the right time to give those out later on, much later on, after our hour and a quarter of fucking worship. But
I think you're
it,
going to go to hell for saying fucking worship. I really do. I think
huh?
Jesus.
I worship fucking, so that's I'm completely all right with that. But we did come into that, and Michelle, I'm interested in your reflections. What were you thinking when they're up there binding a spirit of distraction, speaking peace over everyone, and basically trying to still the crowd?
I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't understand what she was saying. I couldn't work out if she was just, I think I'd said to you a couple of times, Brian, and I also asked Troy, is it started yet? Has it started? What part is this? It was, um, probably more fluid than what I had previously experienced. Other services that I'd been to had sort of, I guess, were more structured and started very formally and had started and used sort of a bit like a recipe to go through the service. Whereas, and it sort of throughout the whole service, I just couldn't work out through a lot of it what was going on.
Yeah, the word is liturgy. Can you get that right? It's not a recipe, it's a liturgy.
Oh, liturgy. Sorry, apologies. I don't have the lingo, like you two, obviously, because as we established at the start, I was not a teenage
That's right. Yeah.
fundamentalist.
What was it? Bart? What was it? That Bart Campolo said the other day. He said, "I don't live here anymore, but I still speak the language."
Yeah, that's right. And look, I'm not surprised Michelle didn't know what was going on because, as we know, for those who have ears to hear and for those that don't, they won't hear the Spirit of God or the voice of God. So I'm not surprised, Michelle, that definitely your heathen state prevented you from hearing the
I think
Lord.
there was a few times in the service where we did mention Michelle's hard heart and, not having ears to hear and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, this is just a running theme that we've had since the beginning of the day. So just to the dear listeners, please understand we do love and adore and value Michelle, even though she's a dirty fucking heathen.
Thanks both. That's great. There were
No,
there were some times through the service where, as a threesome, as we were calling ourselves,
thruple.
we a throuple, sorry, we prayed together, and
Yes, we did.
I thought that would be you know really good for me, and that through that I might then start to understand and hear, but it just didn't work that time or this time.
No, because and also because we were taking the piss when we'd get down to pray. So what was happening, folks, is that they would ask us to pray for each other. This is the pastors or the worship leaders, and we didn't want to stand out. So we would pretend to pray, and we'd always lay hands on poor Michelle and pretend that we were praying for her because she needed the ministering, and we were, holier than thou, pretty much.
Which we are. I was copiously taking notes. I felt like an investigative journalist throughout it. I've taken over 20 pages of notes throughout because I didn't want to forget the order of how things went, and I didn't want to forget some of the classic comments made by many of the people up the front. But the person also who led us in prayer and bound things and spoke peace over everyone at the start, she also she had a word from Philippians, and she was saying that ours is inherited through the Spirit, that Jesus emptied himself out. Ooh, sounds a bit crude. He took the form of a servant, he humbled himself, and he had death on the cross. These were all the same fucking things, and they were just spouting them out. This is the stuff that when we were there as well. But while all this is happening, the worship's still going on in the background. And one thing that distracted me, and I know it distracted Michelle, because she said something to me, there was this girl in the choir, and just to set the scene, there's your full band up on the stage, and then at the back of that stage there was a choir of 8 or 9 people, and then there was a choir leader who had their back to us, but the choir was looking at us. And there was one girl that was choking herself out during this worship while it was going on, and Michelle actually said to me, "Is that girl choking herself out?" And wasn't she, Michelle? It was a little bit freaky.
It was actually quite concerning because she looked quite troubled, and it did look like she was actually choking herself, and I couldn't quite work out why or what was going on or what had led her to this depressive state where she felt that she needed to do that. So that it was quite concerning, and it was very distracting because I couldn't stop looking at her to try and figure out what was going on.
But also what's happening at this time. There's so much happening. There is so much visual and auditory stimulation happening that you're not knowing where to look or what to see, because out of the fucking corner of my eye, I'm going, are they flags? And sure enough, giant flags, huge flags started waving on the side of the stage.
Yeah, from the castle of our hearts, because the king was in residence there, right?
It was. It was just like, what the fuck? It was sort of like a cross between a Salvation Army tambourine or timbrel exhibition and a Pentecostal service. It was. I've never seen flags like that in the service.
Hey, can I just also, in terms of that, of everything going on, you talked about this woman praying against the spirit of distraction. Maybe it's the ADHD, or maybe it's that I actually have a very strong spirit of distraction, but I don't remember her doing that. So I must have been distracted. And I also didn't see the girl choking herself out. So I don't think she really took full authority of the spirit of distraction because, dude, I was feeling quite distracted. And also you're saying that there was so much going on. Yeah, I don't think she won that battle today because it was pretty fucking distracting, the whole thing.
They were causing a lot of distraction, and also with their over sexualized comments. Because during that prayer, someone else got up and they started to yell out, "Come hard, Jesus! Come hard, Jesus!" And I'm just like, "Fucking hell, people! You've just prayed against the spirit of distraction. Now you're yelling at Jesus to come hard. I'm distracted."
I was
Yeah,
distracted by that too. I couldn't.
yeah, it was pretty
Yeah,
intense.
it was. I think um, just so people can picture it correctly, the flags were more like very large pieces of material, satin coloured material that were just being flown around in a sort of a semi choreographed move.
Yeah, I don't know it was semi choreographed. Well, yes, it was semi choreographed because there was three of them and two were in time and one wasn't. So I think in that sense, semi choreographed is in fact the right term. But it was, and I don't say this in a disparaging way. I'm saying this purely descriptive. It was pretty gay. It was pretty gay. Those flags, the purple flags and the pink flags and the red flags at the back, and they were very sequinedy, shiny. I'm not saying in a disparaging way. I'm just saying if you were at a pride march or a gay club, this is the kind of thing you would see. So, yeah, they were pretty full on.
Yeah, it was bizarre, and flag bearers also, or sorry, flag wavers were also up the back, right up the back of the church, up near the audio booth, which is maybe 40 rows back as well, up that mezzanine type level, and then ones down the front. So there was a lot of distraction. But then,
Hold on, before you move on from the flags, can I say that I reckon someone has had a word or a prophecy because the pastor said later on about, bringing the flags out. And I think, there's those verses in the Old Testament about the standard, being the banners
yeah,
and the standards. And I reckon that's actually a spiritual warfare thing. I really do. Because back in the old days, like in the days of the Old Testament, they would actually march to battle with flags, right? As they still do today. And so there's a lot of that sort of imagery. So I think when they go into spiritual warfare, which is basically make believe, but when they do that, they're trying to imitate what they're reading in the Bible, which is flying those flags and those banners and those standards. And seriously, I reckon it was a spiritual warfare move because later on, the pastor actually called on them to come when he was, excuse it, there it was again, but and he was calling on them to come and wave their flags and stuff. So I reckon there's a spiritual warfare element to that.
oh, I've got no doubt. I completely agree with you. Because, yeah, I wasn't moving away from the flags. I was just pausing because they did come back several times throughout the service, and were ushered in, as you said, later in the service. So he asked for the flag bearers to come back. And Troy, we've got some video of you cheering the flag wavers on, which is good. And you were calling them
I
flaggers
was calling them
for
flaggers.
short.
I was clapping my hands going, flaggers, flaggers, yes. And for what it's worth, later on, it came to a point in the service where people were yelling out. And I was intentionally waiting till just after they'd stopped. And then I'd call it out as if I had Tourette syndrome or something like that. So things would happen, people go, oh, Jesus, like this. And then I just go, Jesus, like this afterwards, or they'd praise him, and it all settle down, and then I just go praise him. And so yes, good times.
It was a lot of fun. I did enjoy it.
And do you remember when the scent of the Holy Spirit came over us, the smell of the Holy Spirit? That was pretty intense as well. Let's
That
talk about
was
that.
incredibly intense.
That
Yes.
was me. That was demonstration that I still have the spirit in me.
Was it actually you?
Did a little, yeah, did a little.
Someone said to me in the chat, because I was running a live chat with some others, and they're going, it was probably Brian. And I was like, no, I don't think it was. But okay, so it was you that dropped your guts. And then...
Yeah, because It was a pop off for Jesus because Michelle turned to me and she obviously she's been with me a long time. She knows. She goes, "Was that you?" I said, "Yes."
That's what my
Can you
wife
smell
would
the
say
spirit?
too. She'd go, "Was that you?" And I would go, "No."
No, well, yes. I'm. It was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was terrible. No, I see that changes the whole dynamic. I thought someone had let fly. Because they used to say, "Can you smell the spirit of God?" But it was Uncle Brian. Okay, well, Brian dropped his guts, and of course, there was a lot of gags about the scent of the spirit and the fragrance of God, and yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I think everyone else around us could smell the
Cliff in the chat, one of our editors actually said, "Are you sure it wasn't Brian?" And I laughed that off, and it turned out, yes, it was in fact Brian. So thank you, Cliff. That was a good call.
Yeah, thank you, Cliff. You looks like you know me too. So that's okay though. I owned it. I didn't shy away from it because
Yep.
I was spirit
So the
led.
field was ripe under harvest, and Brian was ripe under the toilet.
It was. But then next, and I want to say, I took, as I said before, over 20 pages of notes. I haven't even got through the first
Still laughing
page.
at the fart, man. I didn't know it was you. If I'd known it was you, I would have been on the fucking floor. Because I can't believe you dropped your guts. We're trying to be hidden. We're trying to be under the radar, and you just think the place out.
Yeah, but
Some
it's
people
like
left right after that. I don't know if you noticed,
Yeah,
Troy,
they
but
moved.
the people next to us left.
They would have been thinking it was a demon, probably. No, seriously, some people would have been going, "Can you smell that? That's the devil."
yeah. What is that foul spirit? Well, that'll be me.
That'll be Weet-Bix. Yes.
No, it was good fun. But next, we were invited to close our eyes and think about someone who's been on their knees, bowing, and think about them, and then the person who was speaking about that just started to cry while they were talking about it, and it was such a forced cry. It was absolutely pathetic. I mean, I could definitely act cry far better than that. Does anyone remember that?
No, I'm sorry.
No.
I was distracted.
I think Troy might have been at the toilet at that point for the fourth or fifth time. But yes, I remember that because I remember the crying being so theatrical. And I was like, this is a big show. This is all, and these were my thoughts around it's set up to be a show. The whole theatre, it's theatre style, there's band, there's and then the dramatics that came along with this crying. Yes, definitely remember that one.
Yeah, I obviously was at the toilet because I probably would have remembered that. But just want to point out you gave me a hard time for peeing, whereas you were just almost pooing. The other thing that I noticed that was interesting was even though it was very Hillsong in format, it was very Bethel in content. They weren't shying away from the talk of the supernatural. It wasn't God wants to bless you and give you a great life. This was, no, you are called by God as a soldier in his army to do warfare. And when the pastor got up, he's the replacement pastor for the other one who's, we'll pray for him later. But he got up there and he was just, if you're not for us, you're against us. I heard a lot of that kind of talk in that prayer. And there was this sense of tearing down the enemy, but it was more than that. Like did you notice that they talked about atheists a few times in this? There was atheists were the dirty word, and they were throwing out about atheists. And I thought, see, we never talked about atheists back in the day. So obviously that whole, Dawkins and, neo-atheism and all that kind of stuff, that's obviously rocked the church to a degree that wasn't there before for us. So yeah, and I actually felt a little bit personally attacked at that moment. They're in the service and they're talking about, those that are not for us or against us, and we call them down and everything. And I'm thinking, oh, you're the cunts that have been praying against me for all these months. Yeah, no, that was a joke, but nevertheless, it did feel quite personal being on the other side and them talking like
Yeah.
that.
Not welcoming.
There was definitely a strong theme of war. I don't know if you guys picked up on that as well, but it got mentioned a lot, and there was war, and it was through everything, and everybody that got up, and again, this is where I started to get lost because I wasn't sure who was a pastor, who wasn't a pastor, who was a pizza, but they the war theme really came out quite strongly across. And I know at one point when they were talking about atheists, Troy turned to me and said, "They know we're here." Um,
Yeah,
it was
yeah. I was totally feeling it. I was totally feeling like, wow, they really see us as the enemy. But yes, I even wrote down times of battle. And I think they see probably what happened to them with their pastor's moral failing as a direct attack of the enemy, right? To tear down the church. But also they're at war with the external, with the external world. They really are. And that was really, really clear today. And, we get to it later, but there was Seven Mountains Mandate lingo being, terms and stuff being chucked around. But yes, definitely. 100%. There was a real militaristic war, which is still not that far from where we were, Brian, back in our day. There was still a lot of talk about our God is an awesome God and sword of the spirit and gird your loins with the, I don't know, the strap on of truth or whatever it was.
Yeah, there was lots of that, but it was next level. I mean, the dominion theology was huge because they certainly actually kept saying the words dominion. They kept saying dominion over X and Y, dominion over that. They were talking about the amount of time businessmen would come up in people talking and the sermon and saying, we're going to basically tap into the businessmen and we're going to get them talking to other businessmen and we're going to take dominion over business and we're going to take dominion over politics. Like they were saying those words all the way through it. And definitely, Michelle. I mean, it was war, it was battle cry, it was telling people to get ready for war. Prophecies throughout were talking in warlike sort of language all the way through. So, but it was peppered through, and this is what was really different from when we were there. It was a basically an hour and a quarter of worship peppered with free worship, with prophecies, with words, and throughout that time of worship, it was definitely less structured than when we were there because there was people constantly going up the front and getting prayed for. So there was never a call come up the front like there used to be with us, and there was later in the service. But during the worship, people knew that you just went up and you would get prayed for. And then there was people lying prostrate in the aisles, prostrate, not prostate.
Well, that was
I don't
you.
want to.
That was you lying prostate, stinking out the fucking halls.
But yes, there was people lying in front of us in the aisles prostrate.
See, that would never happen at Hillsong, I don't think. Maybe in a closed service, and maybe I'm wrong. I think this shows that they are Bethel and not Hillsong because it's all this warfare, it's all this prayer, prophecy stuff. I don't think that's Hillsong. Hillsong is very much, God wants you to be happy and yada yada, but still drawing in the businessmen. I think that's very Hillsong because that's where the money is, right? We're going to tap
Yeah.
into the businessmen because the businessmen have got money, and I that wasn't lost on me.
No, it was many, many times throughout it. So look, it was also I was sort of checking myself constantly throughout the worship time, and my eyes were just so open to it, having been out so long. And I was just going, this is so fucking manipulative. It was so incredibly hypnotic and repetitive. And Troy right now is showing me a picture on his phone of me worshipping because yes, we
Yeah,
did.
we did
We
because we didn't want to look sus, did we? So we pretended to be into it. But Brian was there with his hands raised, and yeah, it was great. And I was I was
so are
I
you.
was having Tourette's.
No, 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 no. You got your hands raised,
I
Troy,
did,
and it's
I did,
on
and I
our
would
Facebook
clap.
page.
I would clap, and I would shout blessings. Yes.
You would clap. It was very good.
there's a great photo of Brian standing up during one of the worship sections, holding what is his notebook, but in the photo it actually looks like his Bible, and it's very much Brother Brian. Like he just looks the part. It's a great shot.
I would have been a great pastor. People have told me this, and I was being groomed to be a pastor, and maybe I still will.
You would totally be a
Who knows?
great senior pastor now with the grey hair and the beard and everything. Hey, another one was they sang that song and they said he's David's root. And I thought that was brilliant
Yes.
because for our American friends, in Australia, to be someone's root is to be their regular shag, right? So, and to have a root is to have sex. So this isn't an Australian church where they're singing about God or about Jesus. He's David's root. Loved it. Loved it.
Yes, it was good. It's more innuendo from them without even knowing, or did they know? I don't know. I'm
Well,
not quite
there's
sure.
people that say that whole sort of, Jesus lover of my soul kind of sexual stuff is there, and maybe people are aware of it, maybe they're not, but there's no doubt that it's there. It's very sort of Song of Songs, Song of Solomon kind of, I'm going to climb a tree and pick her pomegranates and all that kind of talk.
Yeah.
It's just so blatant, and especially when the women are leading the worship, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it was really quite bizarre because that worship, as was said, went on for a long time, an hour and a quarter. But what I did notice, I was observing as well as doing investigative journalism in my writing, but I was observing people moving through the crowd, praying for people as well. So it wasn't just happening up the front; it was happening throughout the crowd, and it wasn't people that were standing next to you putting your arm around and praying. It was people moving through the aisles and shuffling up in front of people and going and praying for them. And yeah, bit invasive. Like I wasn't seeing them invited in or asking for prayer. They were just going up and doing it. Did either of you notice that?
I reckon, Brian, we talked about the stepping stones in worship leading, fast songs and to slow songs. I mean, this is probably just new stepping stones. There's probably groups of people that have been identified, trained, rostered on to actually be in the service and doing exactly this. I don't think it's people just coming of their own. It's possible, but I think you probably find that that's quite orchestrated, that those people are, I'm on for the 11:30 service, I'm part of the, I'm a prayer marshal or whatever the fuck they call them.
There was a lot of touching, and it was very, get to know your neighbour sort of experience. There were quite a few times where they said, put your arms around, the person next to you, and when they invited you to pray as a group, and and I was sitting there at one point thinking it's very non-COVID friendly. The closeness that it's asking for just wouldn't survive COVID.
Well, it didn't. Everyone was online during the services back then, but it's also invasive of your personal space. What if you're a person that doesn't like touching? What if you're a person that doesn't like that
Oh, well, then you
closeness?
go to a Sydney Anglican church. That's basically what happens if you don't like that.
You don't get a choice. But you and I notice. So this is right now in my notes. I'm saying we're 45 minutes into the service. So this is 45 minutes of structured, unstructured, sort of worship stuff that is happening. But all of the songs so far are really death centric. They're talking about Jesus being wounded, Jesus being slain, Jesus being on a cross, Jesus.
Except
All
the one
about
about
death,
being
though.
David's root. That turn that one on.
Yes, I think the routing song came later, but this was this was definitely a focus because it was one thing I noted down that everything was quite morbid and death and blood and stains and all that sort of stuff, and it wasn't very happy. There was a lot of me focused songs too, but the focus on Jesus was about his death. And I thought, isn't this whole movement about Christianity meant to be about life? And basically, Jesus died so you can have life. But it just kept reminding people, you were shit, and Jesus had to die, and he had to die so gruesomely.
Yeah, yeah, you were so bad, Jesus had to die. It's funny because I noticed that as well. I actually thought there was a lot of songs about you are great, you are worthy, our God is great, our God is worthy, but there was nothing about, and I'm kind of okay too. There was nothing like that. It was all just you are great, you are great, you are great. It wasn't I'm a worm, but it certainly wasn't, and you love me and you've lifted me up and you've done no. It was, and the whole place was dark. The lights were really dark, and it was like being inside a rock concert or inside a play or whatever. It was, the whole thing was very, very dark. And I think, Brian, when you think back to you and I lying in the dark and listening to Carmen, totally about atmosphere, totally about tapping into, stopping people from being distracted, but creating this, I don't know, yeah, just this place where, you can actually really focus on the music and the message of the music. And yeah, I mean, the lights off like that never happened in our day. Ours was all very well lit, grey carpet, white walls, pink chairs. It was very light and fluffy.
Yeah, it was quite different. Like everything was same, but it was certainly different in its approach. Those slow songs were still going 45 minutes in, and lots of the death songs, nothing upbeat. It was all a little bit morbid, to be honest. But what came back out was the flags again, and this is where the flags went nuts at the 45-minute mark. And lucky that those people can never be air traffic controllers, let me tell you, because their flagging was so erratic. I didn't know which way to look. It was quite distracting. And at that time, I saw silver flags, white flags, gold flags, and purple flags. So that was up the back, that was down the front, that was to the side. There was flags everywhere, and this is where they started to refer to them a bit more, and they're actually pointing out the flags. And I think this might be around the first time I heard prophetic flags mentioned, which I'd never heard a prophetic flag before, but that's apparently what they were.
The other thing I think I want to say here in terms of the flags and the lighting and everything is, at one stage I said to you, this looks like a casino. And we sent photos to one of our editors who's over in Vegas, and he said, that looks like Vegas, with all those sort of gold colored lights and and the flags, etc. It was, I don't know, it was bordering on tacky was really what it was.
Yeah, not overly inviting. Michelle, as a seeker in a seeker service, did you feel like your seeking was being met by this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was very dark, and it it didn't feel very sort of inviting or upbeat or uplifting in terms of the music. And I think I mentioned to you both that the music seemed really different to even my experience when I was younger, where a lot of the songs we used to sing were actually, you know, um, quite positive and uplifting and had a bit more of a sort of a beat to it. So um, it was really interesting. The atmosphere was really, really interesting. And even the flagging, you think, that could be something quite positive or quite a beautiful piece. Even that felt a little bit dark in the way that it was choreographed or semi choreographed.
Yeah, it was a bit horror movie-esque at times. And I wonder if that's a reflection of them as a church, or is this the sort of the Bethel spooky kind of thing, like, I don't know. I haven't been to Hillsong, but I just couldn't imagine Hillsong being like this. This was, Hillsong feels like Bon Jovi. This felt like The Cure.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually. Because I've seen both in concert, as have you, Michelle, and yeah, definitely Cure-esque. But it was also, there's bad shit happening, and there's demonic forces that are all around us constantly, but we're right on the edge. We're right on the edge of a breakthrough. Just hang with us. And that's the stuff that we used to hear, not in that, probably it wasn't that seriously pushed back in our day, back at Great Big
I
AOG.
don't know,
But you
man. I
definitely
don't
hear
know. I
that.
reckon it was because it was always like revivals coming, revivals coming. We were always thinking it's almost there, and it was always sort of that thing that was carrot that was dangled in front of us. So I think it was there, not it necessarily framed the same way, but I think it was always there, especially at Bible college. It was constantly revival, 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 because we weren't waiting for Jesus to come back. We were waiting for revival. And that was another thing. No mention of the return of the Lord. Zero.
No, in fact, actually, they were talking about that there needed to get rid of your pride, and this was going to take several generations and all that sort of stuff. So they were very much talking about generational change needed for. They didn't say for Jesus coming back, but for dominion to take place. But it was around about this point too, because there was a lot of, so there's worship, and then there's lots of talk. There's words being bought, and Michelle, you actually turned to me at this stage and. Because the pastor had got up at this stage and he started talking more about lambs and all that sort of stuff. And you said, has the sermon started? Like, is this the sermon? And I'm like, no, it's not. And then he started going on about, he started praying a word over the over everyone saying the gates of Hades won't prevail. We're not playing church here. We mean business. We're heading into battle. We're kings and priests, blah, blah, blah. We're stepping into battle. We're binding. We're loosing. And that's how it went on for about 5 minutes. And it sounded like it was the start of a sermon which was hyped up, but it wasn't. It was just like an interlude, because there was still, that person was going to hang on quite a while longer, about another 20 minutes, in fact, before they invited the speaker up.
Hey, Brian, this is turning into a really, really long episode. So I reckon we should cut it here and come back for part 2. What do you reckon?
I think that's a great idea. Don't know about you, but I am feeling a wee bit fucked halfway through this.
Yeah, there's a lot here. So yeah, let's turn it into 2 episodes. So folks, we'll see you in a week's time. We're going to drop this a little bit early. We'll see you in a week's time for part 2 of this episode.
If you'd like to connect with the I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist podcast, then please see the links in our link tree in the show notes. We invite you to join our listener community on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram, X, and Reddit. Check out our merch on Redbubble. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and all kinds of great evangelical stuff that you can wear proudly. All proceeds go to building and promoting the podcast. We want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters. Subscribers get a range of benefits, including free merch, early access to episodes, access to our exclusive subscribers group, and monthly bonus content. Again, all proceeds of this go to the running and promotion costs of the podcast. A special thanks to Ava, who manages our social strategy, and also to Kerry and Bree, who manage our Facebook listener group, and also to Bree, who puts out our monthly newsletter on Substack. All of our episodes are transcribed by Leanne to increase accessibility. The show is produced and hosted by Brian McDowell and Troy Waller. The sound engineering for this episode was done by Beck Wise. I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist is available wherever you find your podcasts. Again, you can find all our links in our link tree in the show notes. Or why don't you pop across to our website at www.iwasateenagefundamentalist.com.